For more on all of this now, I'm joined by Denis Thompson, who, among other roles, was also the force commander of the multinational force and observers from 2014 to 2017. It's good to have you today, sir. Thanks for taking the time.
Yes, good morning, Lindsay.
So there's also reports that we're seeing that more than 700 Palestinians were killed in a 24-hour span since this fighting between Israel and Hamas resumed. So first off, what are your thoughts on the outcome of the breakdown in talks between the two sides?
Well, first of all, with the breakdown in the talks, obviously the war is going to carry on until these talks recommence. But what we're really seeing here is a war in narratives. There's a physical war going on. There's no doubt about that. But in the war of narratives, where Israel clearly has the right to self-defense and that Hamas is a target, what they're not doing is avoiding civilian casualties. And Lloyd Austin hit the nail on the head by saying they may gain a tactical victory, but they'll end up with a strategic defeat if they don't pay attention to that war on narrative. It means that their stated war aim is to eliminate Hamas, which means that they'll need to clear every corner of the Gaza Strip. And their tactics to date have been to attempt from the air to locate, as you mentioned in the report, the tunnel systems and the tunnel entrances, et cetera, bomb them from a distance, and then clear the area with overwhelming force. And as a result, the numbers of civilian casualties have been sky high. And the results are, for Israel, that their window of international legitimacy is closing quickly. And that while many Gazans die and seem to be the victims, which is definitely the case, Hamas is also being painted as a victim, and that's not working in Israel's favor.
I want to talk a little bit more about those narratives that you mentioned as well, because there is a lot of back and forth right now between Israel and Hamas when it comes to why those talks broke down. As someone who used to work in the Middle East, keeping the peace between Israel and Egypt, I'm assuming you probably do have a good idea of the friction there. So what's your experience with how countries like Egypt and Israel view Hamas and vice versa?
Well, first of all, there's no secret that Egypt under El-Sisi absolutely despises the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, they evicted the Muslim Brotherhood whilst I was there. And of course, that Hamas is linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, as is the nation state of Turkey. So there's a big difficulty there, and there's no love lost between Hamas and Israel, because clearly Hamas's stated aim is the elimination of Israel. So these two former adversaries are actually, oddly enough, linked together during the current crisis, even though Mr. Sisi, the president of Egypt, needs to be careful because, of course, the street in Egypt tends to support Hamas, at least sees them as the underdog. So it's a difficult situation, but these two nations have no interest, particularly Egypt, in accepting refugees from inside of inside of the Gaza Strip to move into Egypt, because they have enough problems going on in the Sinai Peninsula dealing with an internal insurgency that is directed by Islamic State. So, tricky situation, but there are no friends in the immediate vicinity of the Gaza Strip for Hamas and the Gazan people.
I want to go back to why talks may have broke down, again, with those narratives, but Israel continues to insist on the release of more women and children hostages. Hamas has refused that. So what do you think is actually going on here between what each side is saying in terms of why this truce came to an end?
Well, I actually believe that while Israel is under a lot of pressure from their own population to release as many hostages as possible, every day that passes when the war goes on, actually, oddly enough, works in favor of Hamas, because, of course, as I mentioned before, Israel is slowly losing legitimacy, and when they get pressure from people like Lloyd Austin, it could well stop the war without Hamas having to negotiate with Israel, because there'll be external pressure on Israel that is of such a magnitude that they can no longer ignore it. So I think that's part of the issue. Probably Hamas doesn't want to play anymore because they don't see any advantage in releasing any more hostages. And Israel is the one that's on the back foot at the moment in this war of strategic narratives.
Okay, Denis Thompson, it's been good to get your opinion. I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Lindsay.